Why empires arise and disappear. Probably many wondered why empires, despite all their peak of power, glory, and expansion through historical practice, all perish. Each empire has its own flourishing, stagnation and disappearance, and no empire ever had, with total constant over the course of history both in its creation and in its functioning, through the system and through the reflection of the mentality. The formation of empires are no real need of any nationality, which in its formation occurred after natural way, because none naturally formed nation does not share real needs, and have the same term of protection of those needs, with other naturally or artificially established nations. The motive for the formation of empires of nations, can be found on several things, including fulfilling the ambition of a few in the system, the most common, most aggressive, and the most unjustified motive. Cultural and civilizational superiority over other, non-aggressive expansion. And because of competition or for the protection of other empires, forced expansion. Seen through the prism of historicism and historical trends, personal guess is that the first empire, formed the incentive of the cultural and civilizational superiority over other neighboring nations. After then, fulfilling the ambitions of those who manage the system in order to satisfy the greed, and eventually third motive came for creating sufficient economic and military capabilities in order to be able to protect from the occupation of other empires that have risen and who are a potential threat. Empires fail because all empires relatively quickly lose motivation for its existence. Some empires longer exist, because skillfully manipulated and changed their motives depending on the current situation, but all these motives go fast as a need of nationalities residing in the system. Besides losing motivation as the main consequence of the downfall of imperial systems, lies in the imbalance of the real needs and expectations of leading people/nation in the empire. Balance is lost or imbalance occurs during flourished leading nation or people that creates a consequence of the creation of the imperial system. The expectations of those nations sharply grow until the moment when the empire will start not to justifying the motive for its existence, and then it occurs period of stagnation. Then remain high expectations among the leading nation, while the system running out of capacity to achieve their expectations. During this period, the most frequently is occurring civil wars. Each empire when it came to the moment of stagnation, a question of time is when the imperial system will experience failure. During the period of stagnation as a secondary consequence of the demise of the imperial system is creating the need for autonomy in the conquered or secondary peoples who lived in the composition of that empire. During the period of stagnation historical practice has shown that all empires used fiercest, bloodiest, and the most unhuman methods on the subject nations to delay collapse. When subject nations start to separate from the imperial system, then the empire experiencing failure. Imperial system falls into bad system editing, because you can't create a good policy with good laws, if people do not obey. Imperialism imposes laws on other nations, according to the needs of leading nation. While for leading people/nation the system is bad in the future, because by acquiring an excessive amount of goods and services the state provides comfort in leading people/nation and thus get used to its excessive amount of goods and services. This spoiling for the people and nation leading to decadent condition, while giving unrealistic expectations due to dissolution of the system. So we can conclude that imperial systems are bad for nations who over is pushed the law, and also for leading nations who are applying the law. Why globalization is imperial process? Globalization is an imperial process because it seeks to establish control over the overall world population, in order to realize the ambition of a few, the most unjustified motive. Globalization itself is a tool primarily used by an imperial superpower created in 1776, empire that already showing signs of stagnation. Globalization is such a process because the exercise of economic monopoly and economic monopoly is exercised through the creation of wider regional economic communities. Under the pretext of progress and development to create such economic communities, is establishing control legislation or legal norms. Through control of worldwide legislation, is imagined control of the world. And since every nation moved towards the harmonization of legislation with the needs, the globalization tends to suppress the real needs and create new needs, which are mostly closely related to technological development. This process is a modern psychological tool, because for the first time an imperial system through the process of imposition of power, uses first imposing needs on everyday people different from conventional method of levying first laws to nations, and afterwards by their societies to enact laws that suit to the needs of globalization or the empire that is used as a tool. This new modified method of imposing authority, probably resulted from what the drivers of this process understand that good laws are those laws that the people themselves are submissive to them. But forget that good design is sure of what people obey the laws, but those laws also need for the people to be good for them. Globalization started after the fall of the Berlin Wall, or when the unofficial world became unipolar in international relations. Since then this process in practice proved to be very negative, because aggressively ruins the real needs of the people, citizens, in physical and spiritual affairs. So by continuous media campaign, the expectations of the population is holding in unrealistically high level, while the prospect of accomplishing those needs of individuals are with low chance of success. This causes the motive of human existence, to be only the creation of ever greater and greater material base, forgetting the other real needs. So propensity for materiality goes very marked in almost all nationalities with their mentalities, and as a consequence of this is starting to arise harsher capitalist and interpersonal relationships in the societies. Through the same media campaign seriously is threatened marriage and underestimated along with the values on which marriage rests. Without creating a functional marriage in a society, very natural flow of the real needs receive another negative flow for all generations, young, middle and older age group, and there in the future is disability in the normal course of shaping the offspring. Therefore, this process, though it is imperial process, it is also a negative process for all societies under its influence. The original text is translated from Macedonian language by Polygrost followers, and is an excerpt from the book Basilia, Arch-Theme of the New Society, Chapter A, 2015.